My name is Father Lawrence Jagfeld. I am a Franciscan friar of the Sacred Heart Province, and I am also the administrator of CUSA, an apostolate of persons with chronic illness and/or disability. The 22nd Sunday of Ordinary Time in the C cycle of the Lectionary for Sunday Mass presents us with a parable that we are very familiar with. On a Sabbath, Jesus went to dine at the home of one of the leading Pharisees, and the people there were observing him carefully. He told a parable to those who had been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited, and the host who invited both of you may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man." And then you would proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place, so that when the host comes to you, he may say, "My friend, move up to a higher position." Then you will enjoy the esteem of your companions at the table. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Then he said to the host who invited him, "When you hold a lunch or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers, or your relatives or your wealthy neighbors, in case they may invite you back and you have repayment. Rather, when you have a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. Blessed indeed will you be because of their inability to repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." In order to really understand this particular parable, this particular story, we have to immerse ourselves into the cultural reality of dinner etiquette at the time of the Gospels. It's something that we are totally unfamiliar with. When we go to a banquet, say we go to a wedding banquet or to a big lavish party, there are place cards telling us exactly where to sit. But that would not have been the situation at the time of Jesus. First of all, people invited others of equal social rank. You didn't invite people ahead of you, and you didn't invite people below you. It just wasn't done. So by the fact that Jesus is invited by the Pharisees to dine at one of their homes, it tells us, first of all, that the Pharisees consider Jesus to be of equal social rank. That's important to keep in mind as we listen to the rest of the Gospel. Then Jesus begins to speak to the other guests. Now, the eating arrangement in such a situation would be a U-shaped table with an open area in the middle so that the servants, the waiters, could bring the food to you without disturbing you. And you would be reclined, you would be lying down as you ate, up on one elbow, you might say. The place of honor would be the place right next to the host, to the man who has invited you. So the more honorable your place in society, the closer you would be to the host. And Jesus tells the guests that they should wait to be told where they are to sit, rather than face the embarrassment of having to give up their position to another person. Then Jesus begins to address the host. In fact, he begins to tell his host how to be a host. And in this particular cultural situation, that is really something of a social blunder on Jesus' part. People just don't do that. You don't tell your host how to hold a party, or how to seat the guests, or who to invite. Again, at this time, you would invite people of equal social rank. And you would expect to be invited back to their homes, back and forth. You do me a favor, and then I do you a favor, and then you do me another favor, and then I do you another favor. You send me an invitation, then I send you an invitation. Then you send me another invitation, and so on and so on. It continues from there. This is known as the notion of reciprocity in the scriptures. If you do good, good will be done to you. If you do bad, bad will be done to you. Jesus is telling the host to put aside the notion of reciprocity. And in fact, if the host were to do that, he would be committing social suicide. He would be ostracized. If he would invite people from the streets, blind people, poor people, people who could not repay him, to his home for dinner, and his other guests saw this, he would be cut off. He would not be invited to their homes because he has insulted them by inviting people who are not of their social rank. He's telling his guests, I consider you to be no more than a poor person, no more than a blind or a crippled person. And I can assure you this would have been taken as an insult. But Jesus is really upsetting that whole notion of reciprocity. And he sums it up by a phrase that we hear very often in the gospel. The first shall be last, the last shall be first. And this is a particular theme of Luke's gospel. It begins in the very first chapter with the Blessed Mother singing her canticle of praise, in which she praises God for putting down the proud and lifting up the meek, for putting down the well-fed and lifting up the hungry. And throughout the gospel, Luke continues to emphasize this notion that if you want to be first, you have to choose the last place. If you want to be considered by God as first in the kingdom, you must take the last place in this life. Jesus, of course, not only speaks of this, but he exemplifies it in his ignominious death on the cross. By dying this most shameful death, he is in fact saying that he aligns himself with those who have not, with those who are oppressed, with those who are poor. And his resurrection is also proof that God, in fact, rewards those who act this way. So this gospel goes a long way, not only in teaching the people of that age some table manners, but it goes a long way in informing our own faith, in telling us who we should be in our society. If we are so concerned about our status in society that we will have nothing to do with people outside of our social stratus, then we are really in for a big disappointment later on. Our new Holy Father, Pope Francis, has really made this a hallmark of his preaching. He is constantly reminding us of our responsibility to care for those who have less than we have, who are on a lower social ladder rung than we are, that it is our responsibility to lift them up, and that this will be what God is looking for when it is our time to be rewarded. Don't look for repayment in this life. You will be rewarded in the resurrection of the just. For more information about CUSA, please visit our website at www.qson.org or look us up on Facebook.